If you're playing the spotter, dig or die, and still feel as lost as I did during my first few hours, don't worry, because this game tricks a lot of people. It looks simple at first glance, but the deeper you go, the more complex it gets. And I mean that literally. I explored little by little, made plenty of mistakes, and along the way, I took notes on things that made a real difference in my experience. I've put together 10 advanced tips that will completely change the way you play. Some of these I wish I'd known much sooner because they would have saved me a lot of headaches. So if you're tired of trial and error and ready to actually dominate this game, stick around because this is exactly what you need. I'm Matthew, and the video is about to start. Your turret's auto aim is comfortable, convenient, and it will kill you at the worst possible times. I'm not saying it's useless. It does a decent job most of the time. But when the Night Wave reaches its climax, when enemies are coming from all sides and you feel like the situation is spiraling out of control, that is exactly when taking manual control of the main turret completely changes the outcome of the night. The reason is simple. Auto-aim prioritizes targets based on proximity or its own internal logic. And that logic isn't always right. It doesn't know how to distinguish that an enemy who explodes upon getting close needs to die before anything else. It doesn't react with the necessary urgency for a runner that is approaching your barricades too quickly. You know these things because you are seeing the situation, and when you take control, that situational awareness turns into real damage in the right place. The manual damage of the main turret is superior to the automatic damage, and that isn't a small difference. You can focus on priority targets with surgical precision, redirect fire instantly when a new threat emerges, and above all, you avoid those situations where the automation decides to shoot at something irrelevant while an explosive enemy approaches, unopposed. In the climax of a wave, every second of misplaced focus can cost you an entire barricade. The practical tip is let the automation work at the start and middle of the wave when the volume is high but manageable. But as soon as you notice things heating up, enemies coming faster and in mixed groups, it's time to take manual control. Learn to recognize that moment and you will survive nights that previously seemed impossible. One of the mistakes I made most often didn't happen during mining or night defense. It happened the moment you open the tech tree and think, I'll upgrade a little bit of everything. This mindset seems reasonable and efficient, but in practice, it leaves you weak in absolutely everything. The game has 3 independent trees, character, turret, and base, plus 3 completely distinct weapon specializations. And trying to cover all of them at once is a recipe for mediocrity. The 3 weapon specializations define very different playstyles. The Hunter uses the railgun and is designed to eliminate high priority targets with precision. The Suppressor operates with the Tesla cannon and is ideal for crowd control with continuous area damage. The Gunner carries the cluster grenade launcher and delivers massive explosions that clear multiple enemies at once. Each of these paths has a clear identity, and when you truly invest in one of them, you start to feel the real power the game offers. The problem with spreading points is that you never reach the upgrades that actually matter in any of the trees. The best benefits are in the deeper layers of each specialization, and if you're distributing everything equally, those layers remain inaccessible for too long. You spend the whole game with mediocre upgrades in everything, while someone focused on a single tree is already at another level of efficiency. So before you spend your first point, decide which playstyle suits you and commit to it. If you like precision and taking out specific threats, go Hunter. If you prefer area control and enemy waves, Suppressor is your path. If you want pure explosive power, the Gunner delivers. Any of the 3 works very well when you truly invest. What doesn't work is trying to be all 3 at once. Let me tell you about the thing that will kill you most. And it's not a monster or a hidden trap. It's your own greed. You know that just a little bit more feeling when you're digging deep, finding better and better ore, and thinking you have time to go just a bit further down before heading back? Well, that thought will destroy you in this game. The light cycle here is real and functions like a relentless timer. When the sky starts to darken, it doesn't matter what you found down there, and it doesn't matter if you're standing in front of a rare ore vein that looks like the best thing in the game so far. Stop everything. Start climbing. The game isn't being dramatic when the sky changes color. It's warning you that night has arrived and that the hordes are going to attack your base. The real problem isn't just dying underground. It's the time you waste trying to get back. When you're too deep after nightfall, you find yourself racing against the clock, climbing up disoriented, while your base up top is being destroyed without you there to defend it. It's a lose-lose situation you created with your own hands. And the worst part is you knew you were wrong when you decided to stay. So treat the darkening sky as the golden rule of your gameplay loop. Not as a suggestion, but as law. The day is for exploring and digging. The night is for defending. Once you internalize this rhythm, you'll realize the game feels much fairer and more strategic, and you stop feeling like you're being punished randomly. The punishment was always your choice to stay when you should have climbed. If you ask me what the most important upgrade in the Spotter Digger die is, I won't hesitate for a second. It's the jetpack. Not a stronger pickaxe, not tougher armor, the jetpack. The reason is simple. It does you no good to dig deep and fill your inventory with valuable ore if you get stuck down there unable to return fast enough. This is exactly the problem most players face at the beginning. You go down, dig a lot, fill your inventory, and then realize the climb back is costing you an absurd amount of time. Every second you spend returning to the surface is a second you aren't mining, defending, or progressing. The basic jetpack solves the problem passively, but when you invest in flight time and battery recharge speed, the game changes completely. These two attributes work together in a way that seems simple but makes a massive difference in practice. With more flight time, you can clear long sections without pausing. With faster recharge, you aren't stuck waiting for the battery to recover mid-climb. The result is a much more fluid trip back to the surface, meaning you can explore deeper during your expeditions without the fear of getting stuck or wasting precious time. So, as soon as you have the resources to choose where to invest, prioritize the jetpack above everything else. Think of the upgrade as an efficiency multiplier for everything you do in the game. The faster you climb, the more often you can go down, and the more often you go down, the faster you advance. It's the kind of investment that seems small at the moment, but defines the pace of your entire progression. Kamikaze drones, unlocked by artifacts you find while exploring, are one of the most powerful tools you have to clear groups of mutants before they even reach your barricades. When you understand how to use them correctly, the night stops being a nightmare and starts becoming manageable. However, there's a detail about the receiver that completely changes the equation, and the game doesn't make it very clear. Repairing the receiver advances the main mission progress, which sounds great on paper. The problem is that this drastically increases the difficulty of the nightly waves. The community has reached a firm consensus on this. Never repair the receiver before your base is well fortified. Trenches, turrets, traps, all of that needs to be in place first. The right mindset is to farm before you advance. It seems counterintuitive to hold back story progress, but this game punishes you severely for advancing unprepared. Each harder wave that hits an unprepared base can undo hours of work in a matter of minutes. Kamikaze drones are part of this preparation because they act outside the perimeter, eliminating threats before they even test your physical defenses. So the ideal loop is explore, collect artifacts, build a solid base with multiple defensive layers, and only then consider repairing the receiver. When you finally move forward, you'll do so with a base that can handle whatever comes. Those who try to rush this progression learn the hard way that the game does not forgive haste. There is a layer that completely changes the way you play, and it is literally buried. The deeper you dig, the more you start to find things that don't look natural. Structures that were clearly built, dirt-covered bunkers, ruins of something that existed before all this. And inside these structures are the roguelike artifacts, and they aren't just common upgrades. They rewrite the rules of the game for you. The difference between a roguelike artifact and a normal upgrade is huge. A normal upgrade improves a number, increases a percentage, or takes an incremental step in your progression. An artifact changes what is possible. We're talking about things like energy shields that alter how you take damage, or doubled mining speed that completely transforms the pace of your expeditions. These are permanent modifiers that create a different version of your character depending on what you find. What makes these artifacts even more interesting is that they aren't available in any shop and don't appear in any tech tree. The only way to get them is to explore. And not just exploring randomly, but going deep, keeping your eyes open for structures that break the natural pattern of the underground, and having the willingness to investigate every bunker and ruin you find along the way. This also changes how you should think about your expeditions. It's not just about filling your inventory with ore and getting back quickly. Sometimes it's worth going down one more level or covering more horizontal ground specifically, because somewhere at that depth, there's a structure waiting with an artifact that could completely redefine your playstyle. The best encounters in this game aren't on the surface. They are down there waiting for those curious enough to look. The spotter, dig or die, has a central tension that the game doesn't explain directly, but you'll feel it firsthand if you don't pay attention. The real objective isn't just surviving the nights. It's repairing the receiver. And if you treat its repair as something secondary, something you'll do when you have spare time, the mutant waves will scale to a point where no defense you've built will be enough. The game punishes you for ignoring the main objective just as much as it punishes you for rushing it. This creates an interesting tension because every repair you make to the receiver advances the mission, but it also drastically increases the difficulty of the nightly waves. The community has reached a clear consensus on this. Never repair the receiver before your base is well structured. Trenches, strategically placed turrets, traps, covering blind spots, all of this needs to be in place before you touch the receiver, because when the difficulty goes up, it goes up for real. The right mindset is to think in cycles. You spend a period farming resources, building and reinforcing the base, preparing everything to withstand a higher difficulty. Only after you look at your base and think, this can handle whatever comes, then you go to the receiver and advance to the next stage. Those who try to repair too early, driven by the urge to progress the story, learn in the most painful way that the game has no mercy for unprepared bases. The loop of farming first and repairing later isn't just a survival tip. It's how the game was designed to be played. When you respect this rhythm, each repair becomes a moment of real achievement because you know you prepared everything correctly before pressing that button. And when the harder wave arrives and your base holds, you understand that planning was just as important as any upgrade you unlocked. Most players in the spotter dig or die treat defense as something that only happens on the surface, at the base, at the barricades. And that mindset is right up to a point. But there is a much more powerful strategy that starts long before the mutants reach your perimeter. If you're digging haphazardly and letting the underground turn into a chaotic labyrinth, you're missing out on one of the most efficient defensive tools in the game. The idea is simple. Dig narrow tunnels, 1 to 2 blocks wide, in the deeper layers, and use these corridors to direct the hordes exactly where you want them to be. When mutants are forced to pass through a narrow corridor, they stop being a spread out threat and become a line of targets. You position turrets and traps at these points, and what was once a chaotic and hard to control wave becomes a systematic and almost predictable call. The resource scanner is your best friend in this strategy because it's not just for finding ore. It maps out natural caves that already exist underground, and these caves are perfect starting points for creating your funnels. Instead of digging everything from scratch, you take a structure the game has already generated and mold it to your purpose, connecting passages, blocking alternative routes, and turning the terrain to your advantage. This saves considerable time and resources. What this approach fundamentally changes is the power relationship between you and the night waves. You stop reacting to what the mutants do and start dictating the terms of the confrontation. The terrain stops being neutral and becomes an extension of your defense. When you internalize that the underground is just as important as the surface for your survival strategy, the whole game starts to make more sense. There is a type of death that is different from all the others. It's not a glorious death in a difficult wave, and it's not a trap that caught you off guard. It's a cave-in. The ceiling collapsing on top of everything you built underground, destroying hours of work in seconds. And the worst part is that it's exactly the kind of thing you know you should have prevented, but you only realize it when it's too late. The rule of thumb is to place stone pillars or wooden platforms every 10 blocks in any large excavation or subterranean room you create. It seems like a minor detail at the start of the game when you're digging small tunnels and the risk is still low. But that changes completely when you start using dynamite and the auto shovel to clear massive areas in search of gold and diamonds. These tools remove blocks on a large scale, and without proper structural support, you are basically removing the foundations of a structure that will collapse on you. The late game is where cave-ins truly kill entire runs, because that is exactly when you are digging deeper, creating larger spaces, and using more powerful tools. The irony is that the more efficient you become at mining, the greater the structural risk you create without realizing it. The dynamite that clears a huge area of valuable resources is the same dynamite that can turn that area into a catastrophic collapse if you didn't prepare the ground before using it. So get into the habit of placing structural support before you need it, not after. Every time you plan to use dynamite or the auto shovel on a large scale, look at the space that will be created and ask if it has enough pillars to sustain itself. This check takes seconds and can save an entire run. In the end, the best runs in this game aren't the most aggressive. They are the most methodical. When your base starts being swallowed by a wave and you don't understand why, the answer is almost always your turrets reloading at the wrong time. Regarding the turrets in the spotter, dig or die, there is an upgrade priority order that most players ignore, and paying that price in the middle of a wave is one of the most frustrating experiences in the game. Reload speed is not a secondary upgrade. It is the upgrade that determines whether your defensive line holds or collapses. The reason is direct. Enemies that stack up while your turrets are reloading are the primary cause of a wipe in this game. A turret with a high fire rate but slow reload creates windows of vulnerability where an entire group of mutants can cross without resistance. When you reverse this priority and maximize reload speed first, those windows close. Your turrets stay in a continuous cycle of damage, and enemies stop stacking up before they reach the barricades. Only after the reload speed is maximized does it make sense to invest in fire rate and add more machine guns to your defense. In this order, each upgrade enhances the previous one. More fire rate on top of an already efficient reload means real continuous damage, not intermittent bursts with dangerous pauses in the middle. And with more turrets operating at this rhythm, your defense starts to look much more solid than the number of structures suggests. The late game is where all of this converges in a way that feels almost unfair to the mutants. Once you solve the turret overheating problem and add the AI chip, they become autonomous destruction machines operating at the perfect level of efficiency. You stop putting out fires during waves and start watching your defense work on its own. But it all starts with a simple decision at the beginning. Reload speed first, always.
Intelligence and patience, I'll do it all again, cause I never feel complacent. Let's keep the good vibes, positivity's contagious. I'm never looking